Something about walking into a barn, I think, calls us or reminds us to try to slow down at times and be mindful to our surroundings.
Some people think an old building like this that's falling down and it has major structural problems should be torn down. You know, get them out of the way. And if you need something else, put up a pole barn or something you can order online. They'll bring a building in and drop it off from a trailer.
Certainly we have our own architectural fabric that we're developing today. I think it's probably not as honest, doesn't evoke the same feelings as the architectural language that we had when we had these farmsteads spread across the landscape. Part of what I am wanting people to be aware of is the history of who lived on the land before them. So if there is a development, realizing that at one point it was probably part of a much larger parcel, and to just give some thought to how that land might have been used. And when I think about my own children, they're certainly not being raised on a farm. I want them to have an appreciation of what life was like, even for their grandparents.
Central New York is a good setting for growing food because of its deep, fertile soil, heavy rainfall, and broad, sweeping valleys. In the 12th century, the Iroquois natives used this land for the production of beans, corn, and squash. After the American Revolution, the land was turned over to the new American government from the British. Settlers staked their property near one of the many lakes, streams, and ponds, cleared out some forest, and built a basic log cabin. Eventually, permanent dwellings were constructed, along with our first barns. These early structures are known as threshing barns, with 3 bays inside. One for grain storage, one for livestock, and a center bay for threshing grain. A practice originally done by hand. Foundations were built from stone on the flat ground, sometimes arranged in pillars. Timbers were hewn from nearby trees using broadaxes. Boards were nailed to the frame with gaps to let light in, and shingles were cut from single logs. Their simple design from the old country reflected the simple agricultural needs of the time, when families grew enough crops and kept enough livestock to sustain themselves. In 1825, the Erie Canal opened, connecting Lake Erie the Hudson River, and Europe, running directly through New York's fertile region. Because of this new route, freight cost a tenth of what it used to, and transport was 7 times faster. Central New York started selling surplus grain and became the nation's #1 wheat supplier. Ironically, it was the Midwest that benefited most from the canal, a developing region with cheap and exceptionally fertile land. The wheat market was taken over within a decade. Farmers were then encouraged to specialize crop production for the highest profits. The greatest cash crop for the state became dairy in the mid-1800s. With this massive switch, barns also had to change for extra grain and livestock storage. In many cases, the threshing barn designs would be modified. Barns got bigger. Second floors and lofts were added for extra grain storage. Chutes were installed to drop hay to the animals in masonry basements down below. Farmers needed a way to access both levels, so barns were dug out in banks. Another feature of farm expansion was outbuildings. These were built on farms for more specialized purposes when the larger barns couldn't afford the space. Here is a corn crib built for maximum ventilation, a smokehouse for meat preservation, a spring house for keeping milk cool during the summer. This one is from the 1850s, and a granary for threshing grain outside the main barn. Some of the most beautiful outbuildings were carriage houses and stables, often large and very ornate. They were a sign that the farmer had made it. Cupolas were installed on top to provide ventilation and a decorative touch to the buildings. The Gothic Revival architectural trend was influential on these structures, with their pointed arches and pinnacles, intricate verge board, ornate king posts, and hooded windows. Another popular style was Greek Revival. Though never too prevalent in barns, it modeled buildings after ancient Greece, the perceived model of a perfect democracy at the time.